Princess Liana of Solara sat inside the great hall of the royal palace, looking out at the wide blue ocean that surrounded the shining city. The golden towers of Solara reached high into the sky like the hands of old giants. She had been raised there since birth, learning how a ruler must speak, act, and think. But in her heart she always felt something different. The council told her that the strength of the crown came first, that she must never show fear or mercy. Yet she dreamed of a time when the people could live without fear of their own rulers. Every day started the same. Breakfast with her advisors, messages from distant colonies, meetings with officials who wanted to please her. But today was not a normal day, for it was the last meeting before she would sign the Treaty of Control, a law that would force many colonies to give more power to the Grand Concord. The admirals said it was the only way to prevent rebellion. The merchants said it was the only way to keep trade safe. Liana listened, but felt torn inside. Captain Aaron Holt stood quietly by the door, dressed in the clean blue uniform of the fleet. He had served the royal family for years and had seen many leaders come and go, but he had never met anyone quite like Liana. Unlike most rulers, she looked people in the eyes. She thanked the engineers and the servants, and she spoke to soldiers not as tools, but as men and women with their own hopes. Aaron noticed the worry in her face. When the last advisor left the room, he stepped forward. "You do not want to sign, do you, Your Highness?" Liana turned from the window. "I want peace, Captain, but not this kind. They call it peace, but it means silence. They call it order, but it means fear." Aaron hesitated. He had no right to question royal decisions. "Still," he said softly, "the fleet will follow your command, no matter what it is." Her lips curved into a faint smile. "That is what I fear most, that they will follow, even when the path leads to cruelty." Later that evening, the palace was filled with visitors from 100 worlds. The grand lights of the hall sparkled on silver decorations, and music drifted through the air. Liana moved among them, her long white gown glimmering as she greeted governors, admirals, and trade barons. Each one smiled and bowed, saying the same words about duty and destiny. No, to them she was a symbol, not a person. Aaron stood by the entrance, keeping a careful watch. The smell of fine food mixed with the sharp scent of tension. He noticed a few nobles whispering in corners. Something about the way they looked at the princess troubled him. When the ceremony ended, Liana walked alone through the hanging gardens above the palace. The night air was clear and full of stars. She could see the faint lights of ships moving through the upper sky. For many people, those lights meant safety and power. For her, they looked like a cage made of silver. Her tutor, a kind old woman named Mara, found her there. "We're restless, child," she said. "You stand on the edge of a decision that will shape 1,000 worlds." "I know," Liana answered. "They will say I am weak if I refuse. They will say I am heartless if I agree. How can one choice be both right and wrong?" "Because rule is never simple," Mara said gently. "But you are not your ancestors. You must listen to what your heart tells you, even if the world calls it rebellion." That night, Liana could not sleep. She walked through the silent halls of the palace until she reached the great balcony above the eastern gate. From there she could see the whole city below. The buildings shimmered under the moonlight, calm and perfect. Yet she could imagine the lives beyond the light, the workers, children, the voices that no one in the council cared to hear. Aaron found her there near dawn. "Your guards have searched the halls for you," he said. "They worry something may happen before the signing tomorrow." "Something already has happened," she replied. "The moment I began to doubt them, I became their enemy." Aaron looked at her and said, "You are not alone." For a brief moment, silence filled the air between them. A deep understanding passed without a single word. Far beyond the horizon, engines thundered in secret hangars. Men who once pledged loyalty now whispered plans of betrayal. In the next few days, the whole galaxy would tremble. But tonight, there was only the quiet wind, the glow of distant stars, the princess who dared to dream of a kinder future. Though she did not yet know it, the story of her defiance was about to begin, a story that would change the course of humanity forever. The next morning began with bright sunlight over the shining city of Solara. But inside the royal palace, the air felt heavy. It was the day of the grand signing, when Princess Liana would place her royal seal on the Treaty of Control. Every screen in the system was ready to broadcast the ceremony live. The council promised that this treaty would bring peace to the restless colonies. but people whispered that it would bring only obedience and fear. Liana stood before her mirror as her attendants prepared her gown. The silver fabric shimmered softly, but her face did not. She looked at her own reflection and saw a woman who was expected to act like stone. She wondered if strength truly meant silence. When the doors opened, Captain Aaron entered. His uniform was pressed, his face calm, but there was an uneasy light in his eyes. "Your Highness," he said, "the fleet commanders are waiting. The halls are full. Every camera is ready." "Then the world will see how a princess signs away her mercy," she replied gently. Aaron lowered his voice. "You do not have to do it." She turned toward him. "If I refuse, they will call me a traitor. If I obey, the people will live as prisoners. Either way, someone must lose." He wanted to speak again, to tell her to run, to fight, to stand against them. But before he could, the chief minister entered with the scroll of the treaty. "Your Highness," he said proudly, "they await you in the grand chamber. It is time to show unity before the galaxy." The walk to the chamber felt endless. The great corridor was lined with soldiers, banners, and flowers. Music echoed softly from glowing walls. When Liana reached the grand platform, cheers rose from the crowd. She raised her head high, her eyes calm, though her heart beat quickly under her gown. The minister placed the treaty before her. Its surface shimmered faintly under the lights. Liana reached for the pen but stopped. The voices of the council members filled the chamber, soft and eager. They wanted her to sign. They expected obedience. Then, without warning, the air changed. The lights flickered. Screens behind the platform glowed red. An officer ran across the floor shouting, "Your Highness, unknown ships in orbit. Defense systems are offline." Panic swept through the room. The minister turned pale. Admirals shouted orders. The ground trembled as explosions thundered far above. The traitor fleet had arrived. Aaron's voice cut through the confusion. "Protect the princess." Over to the secure bunker. But the crowd broke apart in fear before guards could reach her. Liana looked up and saw fire streaking across the sky through the great glass ceiling. The palace shuddered again as enemy ships rained missiles upon the capital. Windows burst. Alarms screamed. Liana grabbed Aaron's arm. "We must get to the transport docks. The council chambers will be a death trap." They ran through collapsing corridors as soldiers fought to hold the gates. Dust fell like snow from the ceilings. Once, a blast threw them to the ground, and Aaron shielded her with his body, the world shaking around them. Through smoke and falling light, they reached the eastern tower where small shuttles waited. An old pilot named Daniel waited at the controls, his hands trembling. "Your Highness," he said, "we have one chance to break through the blockade. The skies are full of their fire." Aaron helped Liana into the narrow craft. "Go," he ordered. "Take us anywhere but here." The shuttle roared to life and rose into the burning sky. Below them, the once golden city of Solara was falling. Fire wrapped around the towers. The mighty palace, symbol of power, became a storm of wreckage. Liana pressed her hands to the window, tears shining in her eyes. Her home, her kingdom, everything she had known was gone in moments. But as the shuttle angled toward the edge of the atmosphere, a strange calm filled her. "They have destroyed the crown," she said quietly, "but not the purpose behind it." Aaron looked at her, covered in dust but unbroken. "As long as you live, there will be hope," he said. The shuttle shook as blasts flared around it. Daniel fought the controls. "Hold on," he shouted. "We are almost through." Finally, with a burst of speed, the craft slipped into the shadow of the planet's rings. Behind them, the flames of Solara still burned against the darkness. For hours, they traveled in silence through the star-filled void. Liana sat near the viewport, her face pale but steady. "They will think we are dead," she said. "Let them. It will give us time to rebuild." Aaron nodded, though exhaustion pulled at every muscle. "Where will you go?" She looked out toward the unknown stars. "Somewhere the council never cared to look. Somewhere real people live. I will not be their symbol anymore. I will be their voice." Far behind them, as the rebel fleet sent new fires into the night sky. But the shuttle flew on, carrying the last hope of a broken world. In that small, battered ship among silent stars, a promise began, a quiet oath that one woman would not surrender to fear, no matter how great the storm. Days turned into weeks as the small shuttle drifted from system to system, finding no safe harbor. Each world they approached carried the crest of the traitor warlords. Every port held soldiers loyal to the new rulers of the Grand Concord. Princess Liana and Captain Aaron had become fugitives, their names erased from official records. Yet rumors quietly spread through secret channels that the lost Princess of Solara still lived. The shuttle's fuel was almost gone when they came upon Meridian 9, a dusty frontier world far from the great trade routes. It was a place of hard work and simple living, where miners dug for minerals deep under the red hills and farmers grew crops in soil mixed with dust and metal. Liana decided they would hide there until a new plan could be made. They landed near a small town under false names. Aaron introduced himself as a veteran pilot, and Liana as his sister, a nurse helping him rebuild his life. The local people did not ask many questions. Everyone on Meridian 9 kept to themselves, used to surviving without help from the Grand Lords of the core planets. Their first home was a single-room cabin in the outskirts. It had creaking floors and a leaking roof, but to Liana it felt peaceful after the noise of palaces. She learned how to cook with real fire, how to patch clothes, and how to fix the water filters when they failed. Her soft hands soon became calloused, and though her back ached at night, she smiled more often. Aaron took work repairing old cargo machines and helping keep the town's few transport ships running. He stayed alert always, scanning new arrivals, ready for the day when someone might recognize them. But the town remained quiet. One evening, at sunset, Liana sat outside watching the horizon. The sky was painted gold and red, and for once she felt safe. Children played near the well and laughed freely, something she had rarely heard in her old life. Old women sat nearby weaving nets. It was simple, almost too quiet, but it was real. An elderly farmer named Jonah became their friend. He often visited, bringing vegetables and news from the nearby settlements. "You two don't talk much about where you came from," he said one day with a curious look. Aaron smiled carefully. "We came from far away, a place that no longer welcomes us." Jonah nodded slowly. "Many of us came here for the same reason. Meridian takes in those who have lost something. But you'll find what you lost too." At night, Liana sometimes walked up the red cliffs above the town. From there, she could see the faint glow of mining lights stretching into the dark valleys. She thought of her people scattered across the stars, living under the cruel rule of the warlords. She felt anger rise inside her, but also guilt, for she had survived when so many had not. Aaron found her there one evening. "You are thinking of them again," he said. "How can I not?" she replied. "Every day that I hide, they suffer. I was meant to lead, but now I plant vegetables." Aaron stepped beside her. "Sometimes leading means waiting until the time is right. You taught me that." She smiled briefly. "You make patience sound like courage, but I am not so sure." Weeks passed. The princess slowly became part of the community. She worked beside the miners, helped teach children, and tended to the sick. People began to speak of her kindness without knowing who she truly was. Her steady eyes and calm words gave them hope, and soon her presence became a quiet flame in their hearts. One night, a young messenger arrived in secret from another settlement. He spoke with Aaron in whispers. "There are men who still fight for the old crown," the boy said urgently. "They hide in the deep belt, moving from moon to moon. They say if the princess were alive, they would follow her again." Aaron told Liana what he had heard. At first, she said nothing, only looked out the window at the night sky. Then she said, "If they still have courage, you must give them direction." She began to write messages on old communication devices, and reaching out to hidden fleets and rebel groups across remote worlds. The replies came slowly at first, then faster. Officers, engineers, and farmers all shared one belief, that Liana still represented the heart of true humanity. Within months, small symbols began to appear on ships and buildings across scattered colonies, an open hand surrounded by a ring of light. It was the mark of her cause, though no one called it rebellion. They called it renewal. Aaron worried that their quiet life on Meridian 9 was ending, but he saw the fire in Liana's eyes returning. "You cannot stay hidden, can you?" he asked one morning. She smiled faintly. "No. Hope does not live quietly." The first convoys of supporters began to arrive secretly on Meridian 9. Old soldiers, pilots, and builders came to join her. They brought weapons, supplies, and stories of oppression under the new rulers. Lyanna did not welcome them as subjects, but as equals. "We will not fight for revenge," she told them. "We will fight so that no one in any world lives afraid again." Under the endless sky of the small frontier planet, the first spark of rebellion was lit. It was small, it was fragile, but it carried the power of every human heart that still remembered compassion. And far away, deep in glass towers and shining halls, the warlords began to whisper in fear that the princess they had tried to destroy was enlivened, that her voice was once again moving the stars. The quiet hills of Meridian 9 no longer slept in silence. Lights flickered across the valleys as more people arrived to join the princess. What began as a small group of farmers and miners became a network of engineers, soldiers, doctors, and teachers. They came from many different worlds, each carrying pain and loss, but also faith that the princess who once ruled with kindness still lived and still dreamed of a free humanity. Lyanna no longer hid her name. People now called her Queen Lyanna, though she never placed a crown on her head again. "No more thrones," she often said. "No more rulers above others. We stand side by side." Her words spread through hidden frequencies and whispered messages. Some called it madness to rise against the ruling council, but her followers called it hope. Aaron worked day and night with the new pilots. Old ships were repaired and fitted with new engines. Mechanics turned cargo carriers into defense crafts. The people of Meridian 9 built their fleet not out of pride, but out of survival. They called it the Dawn Fleet. Every evening, Lyanna walked through the training camps with calm eyes, speaking to the young recruits. She listened to their fears and reminded them why they fought. "Do not fight to destroy," she told them gently. "Fight to defend the good that still lives inside us." Across the galaxy, the warlords heard of her growing strength. They dismissed her at first, imagining her as a lost woman with a dream and a few followers. But when their patrol ships began to vanish near the rim worlds, they realized how powerful the rebellion had become. Fleets were gathered, generals chosen, and armies prepared to crush Lyanna's movement before it could spread further. When Aaron brought the news, he found her standing before the great window of the command hall. "They are coming," he said. "It will be a war like none before. They have ships beyond counting." Lyanna's voice was calm but strong. "Let them come. They will see that power without compassion is nothing." The following weeks were full of movement and noise. Small ships lifted into the sky carrying supplies and weapons. Messages came from far worlds, promising support. Engineers built new signal towers so distant colonies could speak to each other. For the first time in many years, scattered planets began to act as one. The human spirit was awakening. On the eve of battle, campfires flickered across the rough fields of Meridian 9. Soldiers sat in small circles, writing letters, repairing gear, or simply staring at the stars. Aaron walked among them, offering quiet words of courage. He stopped near one group of young men and women who seemed barely more than boys and girls. They looked up at him nervously. "Do not be afraid," he said. "Fear is natural. What matters is what you do despite it." When he returned to Lyanna's tent, she was writing something by hand letters for the families of those who might not return. "You should rest," Aaron told her. She looked up. "Rest comes after peace." That night, a storm rolled in, lightning flashing across the red hills. Lyanna stood outside as rain fell on her cloak. "Once, thought I could save the world through words alone," she said to Aaron, "but sometimes words need protection." They lifted off at dawn. The loading fields thundered as hundreds of ships rose into the sky. The Dawn Fleet stretched like silver wings across the heavens. The soldiers inside were not professional warriors, but people fighting for their right to live free. As they left Meridian 9 behind, Lyanna looked down at the planet that had given her new life. "Whatever happens," she whispered, "this world will remain free." When the rebel fleet reached the border systems, they saw the shield of battleships waiting a sea of metal and fire under a cold blue sun. The enemy fleet spread across the horizon, countless engines shining like a wall of flame. Aaron looked at her. "They outnumber us 10-1, he said quietly. Lyanna's eyes were steady. "And this day will show them what one heart can do when it carries the hopes of many." Her voice echoed through every ship of the fleet. "People of the free worlds," she called. "Today we stand for every child who fears the sound of war, for every worker who dreams of peace. We may not have power, but we have truth, Let us fight so that mercy rules again." The battle began with thunder and light. Energy bursts tore through the black sky, painting it with streaks of burning color. Ships darted and spun, engines shrieking. Aaron's command ship charged at the lead of the formation, while Liana coordinated fleets across the sectors. The noise of war filled the airwaves, but her voice remained calm and clear, guiding them through the chaos. Hours passed. Hulls burned, engines failed, yet her fleets did not break. Again and again she told them to hold the line, to protect rather than destroy.
Ow.
Slowly, the tide of battle turned. The great ships of the enemy began to draw back under the united push of people who had once been scattered and afraid. By nightfall, the fleet of the warlords had broken into retreat. Fires burned on their flagships as they fled toward the outer systems. The sky above the battlefield glowed with wreckage and starlight. Liana stood before the viewing window, eyes shining with quiet disbelief. "We have done it," she said softly. Aaron nodded, weary and proud. "You gave them courage to believe again." She turned to him, her expression calm, but full of feeling. "No, Aaron, they gave that to themselves. I only reminded them who they truly are." And as the damaged ships of the dawn fleet drifted together under the first light of morning, a new age was about to begin. The battle that changed the fate of the galaxy was over, but the scars it left behind stretched across the stars. Broken ships drifted in the dark, silent reminders of the storm that had passed. The Dawn fleet was victorious, but half of its vessels no longer moved, and thousands of lives had been lost. Princess Liana stood in the medical hall of her flagship, moving quietly among the wounded. The smell of smoke and burned metal still hung in the air. Now doctors and helpers worked without rest, patching wounds and giving water to the injured. Liana touched the shoulder of a young soldier whose leg had been wrapped in bandages. "You're safe now," she told him softly. The soldier smiled weakly, tears wetting his face. "We fought for you, Your Highness," he said. She shook her head gently. "No, you fought for something far greater. You fought for all of us." Aaron entered soon after, his uniform torn and face-lined with exhaustion. "The surviving fleet reports are in," he said. "We hold the systems clear. The enemy has retreated beyond known space. They have no strength to return." She nodded slowly. "Then our fight is not to destroy them, but to rebuild what they tried to break." For weeks after the great victory, Liana traveled from planet to planet with the remaining ships. Everywhere she went, people came out from hiding. They carried flags, flowers, and cries of joy. They offered food, songs, and simple thanks. Children reached to touch her robe as she walked through the streets. To them, she was not a ruler, but a promise that goodness had survived the darkness. Yet the princess had little time to rest. The old government had fallen, and chaos tried to rise in its place. Some leaders wanted to claim power again. Some traitors wanted wealth above all. Others wanted revenge on the families of the warlords. Liana gathered them in one hall and spoke with calm strength. "If we rebuild only with anger, then the fires of war will return," she said. "If we forget mercy, we will lose what we fought for." Her words moved through the people like a gentle wind after a storm. Slowly, small councils were formed on every world, each chosen by the people. Liana refused any throne. "The age of crowns is over," she said. "Now we rule together." Aaron remained close to her always, had become her friend, her guard, and her voice in places she could not walk. He saw how the long years of battle had taken their toll on her. Many nights he watched her sit alone by the window of the command hall, her face in the faint starlight. "Does peace feel strange after so much pain?" he asked one evening. Liana smiled softly. "Peace feels lighter," she said. "But I wonder how long it will truly last. Freedom must be cared for, like a flame in the wind." Together they oversaw the rebuilding of planets destroyed by the war. On one world, children planted trees where battlefields once burned. On another, old miners turned their ships into schools. Wherever she went, hope followed. People painted her symbol, the open hand, on their homes and walls. It was no longer the mark of rebellion, but of unity. Years passed, and the new Concord grew stronger. No council ruled from palaces anymore. Decisions were made in clear chambers open to all. Liana continued to serve as a guide, never as a queen. The people still called her the Princess of the Dawn, though she owned no crown and sat on no throne. One morning, Aaron found her standing on the balcony of the rebuilt capital city. The sky was bright, and ships floated peacefully above. "It is strange," he said, "to see a galaxy so quiet after all the noise we once knew." "It is not silence," she answered. "It is peace learning to speak." As they watched the sunrise together, Leanna turned to him. "Do you ever think of Solara?" she asked. "Every day," he said. "But I also think that the city lives again in every heart that chooses kindness over fear." Her eyes filled with light. "Then Solara has truly risen again." Time went on, and the stories of her courage spread from one generation to another. Some believed she had become a legend, and that no real woman could have done what the stories told. Others said they had seen her with their own eyes, walking through markets, listening to the people, looking no different from them. No one truly knew where she went in her later years. Some said she settled on a quiet farming world and lived among the people she had freed. Some said she traveled under a different name, helping small villages and teaching children about kindness. But all agreed on one truth: her spirit had become part of the galaxy itself, shining wherever compassion was found. When future generations celebrated the Day of the Dawn, they always told her story. They spoke of the princess who refused fear, who turned soldiers into protectors, and who taught that humanity's greatest strength was not power but heart. And whenever people looked up at the stars, they remembered her words, carried across time and distance, that even in the darkest corners of the night, one act of mercy could light the sky. So the legend of Princess Liana of Solara lived on, long after her voice was gone. She had defied the galaxy not with force, but with faith. And because of her, the children of the New Age grew up believing that kindness once spoken could never be silenced.